Okay, hello everyone. Here's the scenario, and first of all, thanks for tuning in to check this video out. I'm trying to get some input about a vehicle that I currently have, and it is a 2001 Oldsmobile Bravada with the 4.3 liter V6 Vortec V6, and for a couple of years now, it's been consuming a lot of fuel, a lot of fuel. Now, a couple of years ago, I had a intake gasket put on. And in order for them to do that, they had to take the top off and top of the motor, and they took the injectors out. And the mechanic showed me that the number 3 injector for the number 3 cylinder on bank 1 was either not spraying fuel or it was spraying just a little amount. And what made him come to that determination was that all the little brass tips on the end of the poppet nozzles from the spider injector had like shiny brass color to it to indicate that fresh fuel was being sprayed through the injector. But the number 3 injector did not have that shininess to the tip of it. So it was his determination that the injector was not either spraying at all or spraying just a little bit. Now, today, I went out and hooked up this Evo Genesis scan tool to my car just to get some information out of it. And I did an automated system test, and I did some other tests where I was able to disable each injector one at a time while the car was idling. Now, here's what I noticed. I got 6 cylinders, 6 injectors. I disable one injector at a time, and each injector that I disabled, the RPMs dropped and it was a rough idle, which was an indication that the injector is spraying fuel. And when it was cut off with the scan tool, that fuel was no longer being delivered out of that particular cylinder, and it caused the low idle and the rough idle, which the RPM drop. So number 3 cylinder was the biggest concern for me. So when I got to number 3, I disabled the injector, and the car went from a normal steady idle, and it dropped down the RPMs, and it went to a rough idle. So that to me was an indication that that injector is spraying. So maybe it's just not spraying the full amount that it should be. Maybe it's partially clogged. So these are the readings that I got. This first bar up here is the number 2 oxygen sensor downstream that's behind the catalytic converter. And I noticed from the pattern here, there's no switching on and off as if these 2 oxygen sensors here for, what is this, bank 2 and bank 1, you see normal on and off switching with normal low voltage like 65 millivolts up into 877, and in bank 1 you see a low of average of 56 millivolts up to 894. But you see normal switching in bank 2 and in bank 1. But when you get to the long term, the oxygen sensor behind the catalytic converter, this is the type of reading that I get, and that looks highly unusual. And I don't know if that's normal. So if there's anybody that can give some input on that, I'd appreciate it if you leave a comment below. But here's a look at some of the other stats. The car was warmed up. It was in closed loop. Cooling temperature 154. Here's the fuel trims. Okay, you got long-term bank 1 and 2 at 3.9, and this is with the car at idle. This is with the car at idle. In bank 1, as you can see, for the long-term fuel trim, is adding a little bit more fuel than in bank 2 long term. Then when you go down here to the short term, bank 1 and 2 was pretty much average. They was pretty much even. And fuel trim cell was at 17. That's at idle. It's at closed loop. But the short-term fuel trim looked at kind of normal. Okay. Now, after I revved the car up, I revved it up to about 1,500 RPMs. And this is what I got. Now, keep in mind, this is at idle. And this first line up here represents actually the third oxygen sensor, which is downstream behind the catalytic converter. And I can scan it over. As you can see, as I scan back, you got normal switching in the upstream oxygen sensor, switching on and off like it should. But that third oxygen sensor, I wonder if that could really be the cause of my high fuel consumption. But there's no trouble diagnostic code showing for any of the oxygen sensors. So I know I've seen some videos where the oxygen sensor could be lazy, where it's not switching as often as it should, and it's not really picking up as a trouble code. But let me exit out of this, and I'm going to show you this one was after I revved it up. I revved the car up for about 30 seconds, and this is what the downstream oxygen sensor was showing on the graph. It almost like flatlined in the middle to like 360 millivolts at one point.